بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. من يهدي الله فهو المهتد ومن يضلل فلن تجد له وليا مرشدا. رب اشرح لي صدري ويسر لي أمري واحلل عقدة من لساني يفقه قولي. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. الحمد لله الذي هدانا لهذا وما كنا لنهتدي لولا أن هدانا الله. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My dear sisters, my dear daughters and sons, welcome back to a new episode of the Mothers of Believers. Today, inshallah, we're going to continue about the story of lady Zaynab bint Jahsh, Sayyiddah Zaynab bint Jahsh, and we mentioned her relation to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. She's supposed to be the daughter of his aunt. And we mentioned last time that the issue of the abolition, the cancellation or deletion of the adoption in Islam happened by the events happened to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and to his wife Zaynab bint Jahsh during her first marriage to the freed slave Zayd ibn Haritha, as we mentioned last time, and how this first marriage was because of a revelation came sent down by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. That's why Sayyiddah Zaynab, she obeyed the order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and she married Zayd. And we mentioned that problems happened between them, and it was not actually a happy marriage and ended by divorce when Zayd divorced her. And then the revelation sent down by ordering the Prophet ﷺ to marry Sayyiddah Zaynab. And as we mentioned, this is the whole issue is for abolition of the adoption that used to being present at that time in the Arab Peninsula, and the adopted son supposed to inherit and to be treated as a biological one. So when Islam came, the Islam deleted and cancelled this tradition and this culture. And we mentioned that the second marriage for Sayyiddah Zaynab bin Jahsh was to the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, and the Prophet married her in the 5th year after the Hijrah, when she was 36 years old. When she was 36 years old, she married to the Prophet at the 5th year of Hijrah. The hypocrites and disbelievers were saying after their marriage that Muhammad, even though he knows that the wife of the son is forbidden for the father to marry, has married the wife of his own son. So here, as we mentioned, that Islam came to forbid this act, that the adopted son is not like the biological one. And in that case, that if the son married to a woman and then divorced her, the adopted father can marry this woman, because actually it's not his biological father. And it came here, the details of such thing in Surah Al-Ahzab in ayah 37, when Allah is saying, remember Muhammad, when you said to the one on whom Allah bestowed a favor and you bestowed favor, keep your wife and fear Allah. Here the ayat is speaking about the time when Zayd came to the Prophet complaining about the problems and saying about the problems between him and Sayyiddah Zaynab. So the Quran is mentioning to the Prophet that you told him to keep your wife and fear Allah, while you concealed within yourself that which Allah is to disclose. What being concealed, the Prophet ﷺ knows that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed to him that he will marry a Sayyiddah Zaynab. So at the time that she was already a wife for Zayd. So he concealed that in his heart. He didn't disclose that. And every time Zayd came to him to say that I want to divorce her, he tell him, keep your wife and fear Allah. So this was the meanings of this ayat. You concealed within yourself that which Allah is to disclose. Disclose what? Disclose that there is no nothing on you, or it is not a sin that you will marry the wife of your adopted son, because he's not your biological son. And you fear the people while Allah has more right than you fear them, that you fear him. So when Zayd had no longer any need of her, or means it stands for divorcing her, we married her to you. So here you can see the marriage of Sayyiddah Zainab to the Prophet came by revelation from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We married her to you, in order that there is not be upon the believers any discomfort or guilt concerning the wives of their claimed or adopted sons, when they no longer have need of them, and ever is a command or decree of Allah accomplished. So here the ayat is very clear, is telling that what happened with the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam and with Sayyiddah Zainab is for canceling or to forbid the act of adoption, that the adopted son no longer be like the biological one. And if he married a woman and then he divorced her, his father can marry this woman without any guilt, without any discomfort. And this is the decree and the command of Allah. In conclusion, all of these events were desired by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and thus the matter of adoption was abrogated by the hand of Prophet alayhi salatu wassalam. It occurred thus, Anas ibn Malik, mother, Sulaym. Sulaym is a companion, a female companion. She is the mother of Anas. Anas supposed to be the servant that work in the house of the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. His mother brought a dish called hais or hais. Hais is like the date with butter. The date mixed with butter, and it was a very sweet and very delicious meal at that time as a sweet. So she made a little of it in a dish, and she sent her son Anas to the Prophet during the night or the day of marriage to Sayyiddah Zainab. So what happened here, that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam say to Anas ibn Malik, go to such and such a people and invite any of the Muslims you meet, and gave him the names of some of the people he should invite. Anas invited many of the people named, and that people he met, and although approximately 300 people came, they were able to eat their fill, thus a meal that was only enough for 3 or 4 people. And this is a miracle that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and the blessings that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala sent down on his prophet, that the meal which is barely enough for 3 to 4 people was enough actually to feed around 300 people. Now we come to the taqwa of Sayyiddah Zainab. What is the taqwa? We mentioned before, the word taqwa in Arabic is to make a barrier between you and between what Allah forbid, which means that you will not commit sins from the start. This is taqwa. So Sayyidah Aisha, she said about Sayyiddah Zainab that she was a righteous woman. And due to her taqwa, Allah protected her from participating in the slander. We remember the slander event that happened with Sayyidah Aisha, And Sayyida Zainab, she didn't speak in such a story. She didn't involved by any mean in this story. Hadith show us how fond she was of worshipping and how much taqwa she had. Anas ibn Malik reported that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam went into the Masjid al-Nabawi, and sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he saw that a rope was tied between two pillars, and when he asked about this rope, he was answered by the companion that that rope belongs to Zainab. When Zainab becomes tired from standing up during prayer, she holds on to this rope. Then the Prophet ﷺ said, no, worship shouldn't be difficult. Undo this rope. When you are fit and strong, pray standing up. When you are tired, sit down. So this is a very famous hadith, actually, mentioning how Sayyida Zainab, she was making a lot of prayers and a lot of salah, and she's not having enough sleep, to the degree that she had that robe in order to support her during her prayer. After the death of the Prophet, Sayyida Zainab bint Jahsh radiallahu anha had an allowance which had been allocated wholly to her. However, as soon as she received her money, she would immediately distribute it to the poor. And Umar radiallahu anhu sent 1,000 more dirham, but Sayyida Zainab were the same as before, and she distributed everything she had. And this is during the Khalifa, when Umar was Khalifa. I can say that as long as we started the wives of the prophets and the mothers of believers, it is a common character. It's a common characters in all of them that they they contributing in charity, in donation, in spending their money on the poor. Remember, we mentioned that on Sayyida Aisha. We mentioned that before on Sayyida Khadija and Sayyida Sayddah, Zainab. You remember Sayyida Zainab Bint Makhdum, that she was, her title was the mothers of the needy, Sayyida Zainab bint Khuzaima. So here we can see that this was a priority for the mothers of believers to spend their money on the poor and on the needy, and to be participating in the charity and donation. Her death. When Sayyida Zainab died, it's reported that Sayyida Aisha said, one who is worthy of praise, who worship much, has gone to the shelter of orphans and widows, which give us how much she used to donate for the orphans and the widows. Sayyida Zainab died in the 20th year after the Hijrah, when she was 53. When she was 53 years old, during the Khalifat of Umar, and he led the funeral prayer himself, and she was buried in the Baqi' cemetery. There are 11 hadith that were reported by Sayyida Zainab. Now we'll come to the lessons. Lessons to be learned from the life of Sayyida Zainab bint Jahsh. Sayyida Zainab is an example to us with her meticulous worship, her mercy to the poor, her generosity, her efforts to earn her own living, and in giving from what she possessed. And as I mentioned, it's nearly a common character in all the mothers of believers. This is very important that we inspire such character from them. She had remained faithful to the orders of Allah and His Prophet. This shows us that in order to be blessed, we must strive to obey the orders of Allah and His Prophet, even if it is difficult for us. We can see that her first marriage to Zayd was not an easy. It was not an easy thing, because she, as we mentioned, she was from a noble family. a noble lady, and she has to had the order to marry a freed slave, and also the prophet recommended him to be to propose to her. So all that was not easy for her, but because it came as a revelation, it came as an order of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so she obeyed immediately and she submitted to the order of Allah and His Prophet. And this is what should we do. This is another lesson for us, that sometimes something will be difficult for us to carry on from the orders of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. But we must do it. We must do it because it came from our Creator, and simply because we cannot bear the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The punishment of Allah to us, we cannot bear it. That all the time we are hoping His forgiveness, hoping His mercy. So we have to obey the orders, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is wants everything right to us. Everything in the Quran is for our sake, from the rules and from the commandments and from the forbiddens, and we should strive to obey these orders. Sayyiddah Zainab sold the leather. She herself tanned and decorated. And this is an example of a working woman. She used to work. She used to work by painting and tanning the leather. And therefore, we can understand that women are able to work in tasks that are not against their nature and in legitimate surrounding. Sayyiddah Zainab did not use what she earned for her own purposes, but used it to help others, preferring to be a mother to the poor. And this is also a good example of how working women should use their income. When Sayyiddah Aisha was in a most difficult position, Sayyiddah Zainab defended her. We mentioned about the slender event. She taught us that in such situations where people are being harmed by slander or instigation, we mustn't abandon what's right and true. We mustn't go with the people who are saying bad rumors about others without evidence, without proof. And we mentioned that in details when we spoke about the slander event. Now we'll come to our mother, Juwariya Bint AlHarith. Juwariya Bint AlHarith, and her story actually is a very interesting story, that we're going to know our mother Juwariya Bint AlHarith. Who is Juwariya Bint AlHarith? Her father is AlHarith ibn Abd al-Dar, the leader of Bani al-Mustaliq. At that time, before marrying to the Prophet, her father was a disbeliever, and she was with her father, and her father was a leader of a tribe. The name of the tribe is Bani al-Mustaliq. Bani al-Mustaliq. So at that time, he made preparations to attack the Muslims and came as far to Al-Madinah. Prophet, and we spoke about that actually. We spoke about Bani al-Mustaliq at the Sirah and the biography, that it was a place near Al-Madinah, and the reports and investigation came to the Prophet confirming that those people in Bani al-Mustaliq are deciding to come to march to Al-Madinah in order to attack the Muslims. So the Prophet ﷺ, he decided to go for to start by attacking them before entering the Medina. He marched and walked up to their place. And in this battle, he was accompanied by his blessed wife, Sayyiddah Aisha and Sayyiddah Salama. Al-Mustaliq tribe, not expecting to see the Muslims facing them this quickly, were surprised and unprepared. Prophet Muhammad did not start the battle immediately, but he sent Umar radiallahu anh to invite the enemy to Islam. And Umar actually stood up and called upon the Mustaliq to accept Islam. However, they responded to this invitation with arrows, and thus fight was inevitable. And this is very important that the Prophet ﷺ, when he is entering in battle, usually the cause is to protect the Muslim and to defend the Muslims from the attackers that planning to come to the Medina and attack the Muslims. And even when he reached their place or their tribe, he first sent Umar radiallahu anh just to invite them first to Islam before having any confrontation or attack. But they refused, and it was a fierce battle. The Bani Mustaliq were defeated at the end, and they abandoned the battlefield, leaving behind hundreds of captives and great spoils consisting of 5,000 sheep and 2,000 camel, which is considered to be a wealth. The camels at that time, just one camel, if you have one camel, like if you have, for example, a Jaguar car or Lamborghini car, like that. So it was a wealth if you have one camel. So they actually, what the Muslim earned from this battle, 2,000 camels and 5,000 sheep. The chief and the commander of the tribe, AlHarith, as we mentioned, AlHarith ibn Abd al-Dar, fled. But his daughter Juwariya was one of the captives. He left and escaped from the battle and left his daughter with others as captives. Juwariya radiallahu anha, at that time, she married to her cousin, and her cousin was killed in the Bani al-Mustaliq battle. In this battle, in Bani al-Mustaliq, her cousin, who was her first husband for her, killed during the battle. And before the battle, actually 3 days before, she had a dream. Sayyiddah Juwariya, she had a dream. In her dream, she had embraced a moon that appeared in Medina. She dreamt that she embraced a moon that appeared in Medina. She hadn't told anyone in her tribe about her dream because she sensed that in it were indications of the defeat of her tribe and her being taken to Medina. And actually, this is what happened. What happened that she's being taken to Medina with the captives, and she was being like a captive for one of the companion. And she mentioned to him that she will pay for him her freedom. She will pay for him as a ransom for her freedom. And she went, she actually asked to meet the Prophet, and she went to the Prophet ﷺ and told him that she wanted to attain her freedom. And she mentioned that the agreement she had made with her master and the ransom was to be paid, that she will pay for her ransom. The Prophet ﷺ knows that she is the daughter of the leader of this tribe, the daughter of AlHarith ibn Abd al-Dar. So he listened to her carefully, and then he said, "Shall I suggest a more blessed way for you?" She said, "O Prophet of Allah, what can be more blessed than being emancipated?" The Prophet ﷺ said, "I will pay your ransom and take you as my wife." She was shocked by this reply. Never had she met such a great example of morals and kindness. If the Prophet ﷺ had so desired, he could have bought her as a concubine. Yet this lofty person was offering her not only her freedom, but the honor of marrying him. With great excitement, she replied, "O Prophet, if you present me with such an honor, there can be no doubt that this will be more blessed for me." Now, her father is back. Her father is back. At the time that Prophet ﷺ was asking Sayyiddah Juwariya to marry him in Medina, her father AlHarith ibn Abd al-Dar had set out for Medina, taking camels with him to exchange for his daughter. He was taking a lot of camels with him in order to pay the ransom for his daughter. When he arrived in Al-Aqiq is placed near Medina, he decided not to present two best camels. And when he just approaching the Medina, he hid or hid the best two camels in the herd of camels away in an obscure place in this valley. Then he continued on his way. As soon as he arrived to Medina, he went to the Prophet ﷺ and he told him, "O Muhammad, you have captured my daughter. Look, I have brought you camels. Let them be her ransom. Set her free." So what the Prophet ﷺ knew just what to say. Why? The Prophet replied to him and say, "Why didn't you bring the two camels that you hid in the valley in Aqiq?" So the Prophet is reminding him that you have two camels and you hid them in the valley. Why didn't bring them? So AlHarith was shocked. He was sure that no one but himself knew where those camels had been hidden. How could this be? The only way this man could have such knowledge was if he were receiving information from a Lord who knew both what was hidden and what was apparent. At that time, and in such a state of confusion, the light of belief shone in his heart, and the words of Shahada tripped off his tongue, and he embraced Islam. This is the surprise. That not only Juwariya embraced Islam after she was impressed by the kindness of the Prophet, also her father embraced Islam and his two sons, and the leading members of the tribe were also honored with Islam. So now you can see that the whole tribe went into Islam because of its leader. And this was the behavior of most of the tribes that totally entered Islam. You will find that in the tribe, if they found the leader embraced Islam, all of them will follow the leader in doing so. And this is what happened with AlHarith, that the people of his tribe also embraced Islam after they found him and his two sons embraced Islam. And we see the behavior of the most of the merciful Prophet ﷺ. He paid the ransom for Sayyiddah Juwariya, and he's the one who paid he didn't take anything from AlHarith, and he's the one who paid the ransom for Sayyiddah Juwariya, and he set her free and delivered her to her father. Then he asked for her hand in marriage, and he gave her 400 dirhams for her jewelry. So he paid the ransom and paid the mahr, or the jewelry, for her. After setting her free back to her father, then he proposed to her proposed to her father and gave her as mahr 400 dirham. AlHarith, surprised at all that had happened in such a short time, gladly gave his daughter in marriage, greatly admired the lofty morals of Allah Prophet. Prophet Muhammad gave the name of Juwariya to her. Actually, her name was not Juwariya at that time. before Islam, her name was Peri. So he changed her name to Juwariya. Juwariya in Arabic means the little woman girl. If the little girl, it's Jariya, the little of it is Juwariya, which is the little girl. Well, now we can see Sayyiddah Juwariya having the title of the most blessed woman of her tribe, the most blessed woman of the tribe or of her tribe. Why? Prophet Muhammad والسلام, marriage to Sayyiddah Juwariya was an occasion for great blessing. What happened after this marriage? The companions mentioned to themselves or said to the Prophet, "O Prophet, it's not appropriate that the relatives of your wife are our slaves." Because remember, we will mention that the captives from her tribes were taken after the Muslim defeated Banu al-Mustaliq. So now when Sayyiddah Juwariya became the wife of the Prophet, the companion found it's unsuitable to have her tribe as their captives. So they set free all the members of the Mustaliq tribe. Many of the members of the Mustaliq tribe now freed and hearing about the marriage of the Prophet and Sayyiddah Juwariya became Muslim. All of them became Muslim after being freed because they know that Sayyiddah Juwariya became the wife of the Prophet, and even her father, their leader, became Muslim. So all of them influenced by this, and in addition to the admiration and generous, high-minded acts of the Sahaba, of the companion. And in fact, even men who had fled from the Muslims on the battlefield came back to Medina and accepted Islam. Sayyidah Aisha mentioned, "I know of no woman who was more blessed for herself and her tribe than Sayyiddah Juwariya." This marriage was a blessed marriage that made a whole tribe enter the Islam and enter and to be all Muslims by the high morals and by the kindness of the Prophet ﷺ. He treated with Sayyiddah Juwariya. And Sayyiddah Juwariya was a blessed woman. In one day she went from captivity to freedom, from freedom to the truth, and then became the wife of the Prophet and became a mother of believer. Again, through her, hundreds of people from her tribes were immediately set free and became Muslim. And this marriage actually was an example of a marriage based on a social needs and a political needs, that how the Prophet ﷺ trying to make people enter Islam, trying to make people, the whole tribes to be Muslims and enter Islam by this blessed marriage happened to a Sayyiddah Juwariya, and as we mentioned, for her father and her two brothers. We'll stop here inshallah, and we'll continue next time about the virtues of Sayyiddah Juwariya and to know more about her character and her personality. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.